Let's face it, Hulkbuster, as you know, looks like this in game. But he could have had a very different look to it. This is actually the look that you probably would have got if Marvel didn't decide to make a film where they needed a version to be represented in their games. The story of the comic book version of Hulkbuster, which you can see, this is actually a model within Marvel Contest of Champions. It exists in the game files, but was never used. Funnily enough, if you go back to a dev diary, it is mentioned in the bottom left-hand corner, where this version exists in Unity to this day. Well, you think it would, unless, well, a lot of stuff is happening with Unity at the moment. So, yes. But this is the version that we were going to get in Marvel Contest of Champions. We're going to answer why that is in a moment, but I want to cast your mind back to the design. So towards the late 2000s, I think this is around about the 2006 type time period, the Hulkbuster armor was referenced. This is actually suit number 31. In some places it's referred to as 32, but for most places it is the 31st armor. And this certainly is a formidable armor that is meant to, you know, suppress Hulk, but at the same time is meant to, well, do a lot of damage. And that particular damage was seen in this particular series culmination to a big moment. That big moment was that the Hulkbuster drone attacked in Times Square Captain America, Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, Miss Marvel, Wolverine and She-Hulk, who were unable to stop it, realizing it was keyed to the consciousness of Tony Stark. And that boiling point of this series was that these armors were out of control, and of course they are attached to Tony Stark's consciousness, a little thing that we've seen in the movies but not on this particular scale. I actually think this would have been a better Iron Man 3, or maybe something that was more suited to Avengers, the Avengers going against Tony Stark's armors who were out of control. And the story finishing up to this particular point where Iron Man, Tony Stark, realizes he has to end his own life, or make it seem that way, in order to stop the armors, including the Hulkbuster armor. So Tony blasted himself in the chest, therefore making it appear to all the other armors that he had perished. So of course Tony Stark's alive. How is he alive? Well, this is where the story is actually pretty good. This is where Extremis comes in. If you've seen Iron Man 3 from a on-screen like side of things, it's great when it came to like the writing for the comic book, because look, his consciousness does appear dead for a moment when it comes to then stopping all the armors. Great. But then the character can continue because of Extremis, because the Extremis type elements rejuvenate, resurrect him, and look, that's how the story continues. For Tony Stark, that is. So yeah, that's the first time we see a mention of this particular version of Hulkbuster, especially from a visual sense from the comic books. So why did Kabam decide to change this particular version? Well, Marvel strikes again. If you remember a podcast that JX did for the XN interviews, and also myself doing an interview with Gabe as well, Marvel were very particular about having a visual representation of this version of Hulkbuster. Mainly, I think, was to like, you know, overlap the hype between films and also games. So there was kind of like a double element to it. As this version of Hulkbuster had not been planned, they had instead this version already banked, which meant that they had to rush around in a very short space of time to design, model and execute a version of Hulkbuster, which is this one that you see in game. It's always a bit of a catch-22 on this. I must admit, I like them both, but I like them both for different reasons. I probably at the time would not have liked this version, but the more that I have read the comic books and understanding between this particular model versus the movie version of the model, I kind of appreciate them both for very different reasons. And that is again down to what had happened at the time and the fact that this one here on screen is technically a hero, where this particular version of Hulkbuster could be seen, if they were going with the comic book arc that they were going for, could be a villain, because it's not Tony Stark in it in this particular version. It's more of a, well, it's a kind of a rogue one that is disobeying the rules and following its own kind of chain of command, which kind of makes it more AI, more sentient AI to a degree, but more villainous. In any case, what are your thoughts on Hulkbuster over the years? I must admit, first of all, I didn't think much of him, but then as the years have gone on and he's been given the buffs that he has, I've definitely learned to appreciate and enjoy, and it's one of my favourite champions that I wish I could get at 6-star. But here's the thing, in the future, I might even be able to get him at 7-star, so, you know, anything can really happen. But what are your thoughts on the champion, the older design, the comic book version? Put it in the comments section down below. And make sure to catch another episode of this series, the secret, rare, and NPC champions of Marvel Contest of Champions. Check out the playlist, support it, and we'll see you in the next one.